Okay, so for this deep dive, you guys sent in some, let's just say interesting material.
Yeah, I see so.
It's this ebook.
Mm-hmm.
Came out back in 2012. It's called Advanced Cunnilingus: Rare Oral Sex Techniques and Secrets to Giving Her Wild and Explosive Orgasms. Written by a guy named Sean B.
Catchy.
Yeah. So obviously this is pretty in-depth stuff. We're not just gonna like read through the whole thing.
Right.
But we want to pull out like the good
Like
stuff.
the nuggets.
Yeah, the real like valuable techniques and insights to help you guys like really understand the nuances of, more advanced oral sex. Those techniques you don't always hear about that are meant to lead to more heightened experiences for her.
Exactly. We're not looking at the basic stuff here.
Right. So we're going to deep dive into Sean B's ebook, pull out what he's saying, understand his perspective, and, see what we can learn. So one of the first things that really jumped out at me was this kind of foundational idea that he keeps coming back to. And it's that, this was interesting to me, the specific techniques themselves are almost like secondary to building sexual tension through teasing, anticipation, and approaching it all with confidence. He's saying the goal is to like create such a strong desire in your partner that they verbally express their need for stimulation. What do you think about that?
I mean, right off the bat, it puts things in a whole different light.
Right.
Like it's not just a mechanical process.
Yeah.
He's bringing in a huge psychological element.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because building anticipation, really using the brain as, a sexual organ, that can have a huge impact on how someone experiences physical sensations later on.
Yeah.
And that confident approach, I think, it creates this atmosphere where both people feel more comfortable, uninhibited, like willing to explore and find pleasure.
Totally. And that leads right into what he calls mental foreplay, which I thought was super interesting. He says, starting foreplay when you're already in bed is often too late.
Oh.
He says you got to start way before that, like sending, suggestive texts throughout the day, whispering desires, even little teases that don't immediately lead to gratification, like just tracing the vulva over clothing. He even says straight up, for women, sex and orgasms are largely mental.
It really emphasizes that the mind plays such a massive role in sex, right?
Right.
This whole mental foreplay idea, it's all about getting that arousal going, that anticipation before there's even any physical touch.
Yeah.
You're essentially setting the stage mentally, which is going to make those physical sensations that much stronger later.
Totally. And then it gets even more interesting. He introduces this thing called the one and done method.
One and done.
Okay. Yeah. So he describes it as the slow, gradual increase in stimulation that's designed to lead to a really powerful orgasm, but only after this period of like prolonged teasing. And he emphasizes that the oral foreplay in this method, it needs to be focused on her pleasure, not just like getting to the orgasm. He calls it an exploratory adventure.
I like that. Exploratory adventure.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, because it really shifts the focus away from the goal, right?
Yeah.
It's more about being present, experiencing those sensations, enjoying the journey.
Exactly.
And that slowness he's talking about.
Yeah.
That's probably key for building that anticipation and making those initial touches, even more intense.
Totally. So the method has like a few steps.
Okay.
The first is heightened sensations. And he does that through slow teasing.
Right.
And this thing he calls sensate focus via dirty talk.
Sensate focus via dirty talk. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So what he means is like using words to direct her sexual energy. So for example, talking about the sensations she might feel in her clit, while you're stimulating her nipples. Oh, okay, interesting. So it's like you're using words to really focus her attention on different areas of her body.
Exactly.
And kind of amplifying those sensations in her mind, right?
Exactly. And he also talks about like assertively asking her what feels good.
Which makes sense. You need that communication to make sure you're on the right track.
For sure. So step 2 is crafting the first lick.
Okay, the first lick. Got it.
And this one is like very deliberate. He says it should last at least 5 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a slow lick.
It is. And he says it starts down by the perineum and the fourchette.
Okay.
And then moving up to the front commissure with like light, quick touches on the frenulum, that little tag of skin just below the glands, barely touching the glands itself.
Got it.
Then applying firmer pressure to the hood and front commissure as you move back down. Again, skipping over the glands.
Yeah. So very intentional. It's like he's building up to something.
Exactly. Teasing.
Yeah.
Delaying gratification.
Right, right. Then comes step 3, stalking her orgasm.
Stalking her orgasm.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's very visual.
It is, right. So this is all about moving from the less sensitive areas to the more sensitive ones slowly, saving the clit for later. He even talks about adding in like gentle but firm, slow stimulation of the G-spot, or maybe the A-spot.
Okay.
And he uses this analogy of like playing duck, duck, goose.
Okay, duck, duck, goose leading up to
The clouts.
the pounce. Got it.
Which is this burst of like fast, light tongue strokes combined with like firmer, faster G-spot stimulation right when she's on the verge.
So timing is everything there.
Oh, yeah.
Like that pounce has to be at the perfect moment.
Totally.
So it's like you're really building up the anticipation. You're teasing those less sensitive areas. And then when she's at her peak, that's when you really focus on those more sensitive spots.
Exactly. Then he goes into these 4 mistakes.
Okay.
4 mistakes that kill orgasm power.
Mistakes. Everybody makes them. That's right. So the first one we kind of already talked about, right?
Right.
No mental foreplay.
Mm-hmm.
The second mistake is pathetic patience and weak, lackluster foreplay.
Pathetic patience. Okay, I see where he's going with this.
Yeah. And he's basically saying that impatience is like palpable.
You can feel it.
Yeah. And it creates this like pressure,
Right.
which makes it really hard to relax.
Which is super important.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely crucial. And he emphasizes that it's the quality of the foreplay that matters, not just how long it is.
So it's not just about going through the motions.
Yeah.
It has to be like genuinely engaging.
Totally. And he says if there's any tension, like underlying tension, you got to deal with that first before you even, get to the physical stuff.
Right, because that tension is going to get in the way no matter what techniques you use.
Exactly.
Okay, what's mistake number 3?
This one is not calibrating or adapting.
Not calibrating, okay.
Yeah. So he's saying this is a huge issue. It basically means you're not paying attention to her body and how she's responding.
You're not reading the signs.
Exactly. He gives examples like licking too fast, too hard, or just using the same pattern over and over, even when it's clearly not working.
Right.
He says it's all about finding the right balance between stillness and movement, fast and slow, hard and soft.
So variety is key.
Big time.
Got it.
And he highlights 3 things to really pay attention to. Muscle tension, breathing rhythm, and any movements she makes.
Right. Those are like the physical cues.
Yeah, real-time feedback.
It's all about that communication, even if it's nonverbal.
Exactly. Now, mistake number 4 is misunderstanding the arousal and stimulation link.
Okay. Arousal and stimulation link. What does he mean by that?
So what he's saying is if your technique is inconsistent or you have a bad rhythm, it can actually disrupt her pleasure.
Makes sense.
And that if the stimulation is just constant and unchanging, the pleasure can actually start to decrease.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about more stimulation.
Right.
It's about the right kind of stimulation.
Exactly. It's about variety.
And pauses.
Pauses are huge.
Got it. To reset those senses.
Exactly. So then he gets into this idea of like increasing capacity for multiple orgasms.
Okay, multiple orgasms.
That's right. And he talks about this technique called orgasmic edging.
Orgasmic edging.
Yeah. And it's basically bringing her right to the edge and then backing off.
Oh, I see.
Repeating that at least 3 times.
So she can really feel those pre-orgasmic sensations.
Exactly. Like think of it as like teasing a sneeze.
Teasing is me.
You build up all that pressure
Mhm.
and then release it just a little bit before it actually happens.
So the final sneeze is even bigger.
Exactly.
I can see how that could apply.
Yeah, the idea is it can make those orgasms, more intense. And it might even increase her ability to have multiple orgasms.
Right, because she's experiencing those heightened sensations repeatedly.
Totally.
Okay, what else does he have?
So the next one is the blended orgasm.
The blended orgasm. Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah, this is where you stimulate the clit and the G-spot, or maybe the A-spot separately, and then you bring them together for simultaneous stimulation.
For like a double whammy.
Yeah, he calls it pleasure overload.
Makes sense. 2 different erogenous zones working together.
Right.
That could definitely create a more intense experience.
Totally. Then there's this triple delight technique, which is pretty involved.
Triple delight. All right, let's hear it.
Okay, so you're using your thumb on the frenulum,
Okay,
your index and middle fingers on the G-spot.
got it.
And you're doing this like circular massage that then transitions into what he calls a salt pile grabbing.
Yeah, salt pile grabbing.
Yeah, it's basically like a pulsating rhythmic squeezing that some people find really stimulating on the G-spot.
Ah, okay.
While you're doing all that, your other hand is on the front compural or the clitoral shaft, and, you're licking at the same time.
Wow, that's a lot of coordination.
Right.
But I can see how stimulating all those areas at once could be really, really intense.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, anything else in this triple delight category?
Well, he also mentions these things called assisters.
Assisters, like little helpers.
Yeah, exactly. They're like small techniques you can use to boost the intensity during orgasm.
During orgasm, okay.
Yeah, things like massaging the perineum, the frenulum, the fourchette nipples, or the front commissure. You could also try tapping or like strumming the G-spot, A-spot, pubic mound, perineum, or labia. There's this thing he calls stacking, which is basically keeping your tongue still on the clit or hood and then adding like little flickers.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could just alternate the rhythm, the speed, and the pressure of your licking.
So it's about adding these extra layers of stimulation
Exactly.
to really amp up that orgasm.
Exactly.
Oh, got it.
Then there are the finishers. These are more for like the final 2 to 3 minutes leading up to orgasm.
Finishers, okay, like the grand finale.
Exactly. So we're talking about things like creating suction on the clitoral glands, either like a straw-like suction or impulses. There's the clitoral suck and pop technique.
Okay.
Frenulum delight, which is basically a suck and pop followed by a light lick of the frenulum.
Mm.
Twisted pleasure is where you put your fingers inside the vagina and aim for the AFE zone. You know that area some people describe on the anterior front wall? Your thumb is on the frenulum and you're using this twisting motion. And while you're doing that, you're also using suction or the suck and pop on the clit. You can even add some nipple stimulation or G-spot or A-spot stimulation at the same time.
Wow.
And then there's suck and swirl, which is constant suction while your tongue is swirling around the glands, the frenulum, and the area in between. There are a couple of variations on that one, like popper swirls, where you add a pop with the suction. Yeah. And then there's like the advanced suck and swirl, where you're varying the strength and the timing of the swirl.
So these finishers are all about intense, very targeted stimulation.
Yeah, maximum impact.
Right, using different kinds of pressure and movement to really build up to that orgasm.
Totally. And he even talks about licking themes.
Licking themes. Okay, this sounds interesting.
Yeah. This one is all about using your imagination. He says to think of an object or a concept and apply those characteristics to your licking.
Hmm.
So, the speed, the rhythm, the shape of the movement, all of that.
Okay, give me an example.
So, like, imagine a dancing candle flame, a teasing feather, or like a hurricane with circular motions. He even talks about an even crazier hurricane, which is, next level stuff.
I get it. It's about adding creativity, some artistry.
Exactly. Like moving beyond just simple up and down licking.
Right. Using those images to guide your touch.
Totally.
Okay, so what else is in this treasure trove of techniques?
Well, he also discusses something called pelvic floor pulses, or PFPs.
Pelvic floor pulses.
Yeah, he says that involuntary contractions in those muscles can actually tell you what kind of stimulation she likes. So he suggests gently inserting a finger or thumb and paying attention to those pulses while you're trying different things.
Interesting. So it's like her body's giving you feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
He does say to watch out for, like, if she pulls away or jolts, that could be a sign of overstimulation, and that you shouldn't just focus on the PFPs. There are other things to pay attention to.
Right.
Then there's the shower of kisses technique.
Okay.
This one is all about like, prolonged kissing.
Okay.
But not on the clit. It's about kissing all over the vulva except the clit at a rate of about 1 kiss per second for 2 to 5 minutes. And then after that, you start with upward licks across the vaginal opening towards the frenulum. Mm-hmm. And then finally flicks on the glands. And you can play around with the ratios and the speeds.
So again, it's all about that buildup.
Exactly. Teasing and delaying.
Right.
Then there's the half crescendo technique.
Half crescendo, okay.
So this one is about gradually increasing your licking speed. He talks about going through different gears, like decreasing the duration of each repetition.
Okay.
And then you pause and repeat.
So you build up the speed.
Yeah.
Make a break, and then do it again.
Exactly.
Got it.
And then there's the full crescendo technique.
Full crescendo. All right. What's the difference?
So this one is similar, but instead of just increasing the speed, you're cycling through both increasing and decreasing speeds. The idea is to figure out whether your partner responds more to the, like, upshifting in speed or the downshifting.
Ah, so you're experimenting to see what she likes.
Exactly.
Does she like it to speed up gradually or suddenly?
Exactly. It's all about personalization.
Makes sense.
And finally, he gets to these two grand finales.
Grand finales, bring on the fireworks.
Okay, so the first one is called Using Oral Sex to Trigger Vaginal Orgasms During Intercourse.
Okay.
And he specifically says, don't even mention the word orgasm. Yeah. And then he goes into all this detail about locating the G-spot and the A-spot.
Okay.
He talks about different stimulation techniques like tapping, this come-hither motion, sweeping motions, circles, and varying the speed and the pressure of it all.
Right.
He's really big on verbal affirmation and maintaining eye contact.
So again, it's not just physical.
No, the emotional connection is huge.
Right.
And then he gives you this like specific technique to follow. You're doing focused clitoral licking, but very purposeful, varied licks with pauses, and you're focusing on like the 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock area of the clit.
Got it.
And while you're doing that, you're also massaging the vaginal hot spots.
Okay.
Starting with the G spot and then moving to the A spot. He talks about using this, like taking touch, this caterpillar-like motion.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, and you're alternating between the superficial and deeper pressure. And then it all ends with these milking strokes along the anterior vaginal wall during her orgasm.
So you're coordinating the clitoral and vaginal stimulation very precisely.
Yeah, to try to trigger a vaginal orgasm during intercourse.
Right, makes sense.
And he even has this whole section on troubleshooting, you know, like what to do if she feels like she needs to pee or if she's not feeling much sensation.
Yeah, those things can happen.
Totally. So then we get to the second grand finale, and this one is intense.
Okay, lay it on it.
It's called the lady killer technique.
The lady killer technique. Wow, okay.
He says this is for assertive, confident men. And it's all about control and delayed gratification. So you're basically bringing her to the verge of orgasm and then stopping.
Oh, wow.
And you tell her she's not allowed to come yet. And you repeat that like 5 to 10 times.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
That would definitely build up some serious tension.
Oh, yeah. And then finally, you give her this really strong come-on command, and you can add in G-spot or A-spot stimulation if you want.
So it's almost like you're giving her permission to finally let go.
Exactly. But he says, you know, use this one sparingly.
Right. You don't want to overdo it.
Exactly.
Wow. So we just went through like a whole master class in cunnilingus techniques.
Yeah, that was a lot. So what are your main takeaways from all that?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that it's not just about knowing the techniques. It's about understanding the mind-body connection. It's about building tension, paying attention to her responses, and adapting your approach based on what you're seeing and feeling.
Totally. It's about making it a truly personalized experience.
Exactly.
So to our listeners out there, I hope this deep dive has given you some things to think about. You know, maybe try incorporating some mental foreplay or experiment with those licking themes. Find what works for you and your partner.
Communication is key, right?
Absolutely. Talk to each other, experiment, and figure out what brings you both pleasure. And remember, everyone is different.
That's so important.
Yeah. What's really interesting to me, though, is how these principles, like the building anticipation and focusing on pleasure, how could those be applied to other areas of your relationship?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Right. Like what other kinds of orgasms are you maybe stalking in your life? Could be emotional, intellectual, creative.
And with focusing on the process, you know, really being present and intentional, make the experience even better.
Exactly. Food for thought.
Definitely.
And remember, the ebook goes into way more detail. So if this piqued your interest, go check it out.
Yeah, do your own research.
Keep learning, keep exploring.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
See you next time.